This is Dan Jurgens, and if you want to have a good time, keep listening to the Krypton Report.
Jason J. Lewis, the voice of Superman on Justice League Action. And you're listening to the Krypton Report.
Look up in the sky at the birds, the planes.
It is the Krypton Report with your host, Tyler, the Superman of Blue. And with me, as always, my host, co-host, that is the Jimmy Olsen to my Superman, Mr. James Cole. What's up, Jimmy James?
What's going on?
For the rest of this, you will be Jimmy Cole.
That's how I grew up. I grew up until 6th grade, and then they actually asked me what I want to be called.
James here is like Jimmy on Supergirl, where he's like, it's James now. Lowers his voice smooth. He's like, it's James. I am a man. So, but what? But what's
no? It's actually funny. We went in. We have talked about that because I'm the third and my son's the fourth, and I grew up Jimmy. And then in 6th grade, they asked me if I like to be called James or Jimmy or Jim. And I said James. And I've been James ever since. So everybody I've met since then, they call me James. They know me as James. But still when some people meet me through family, they start calling me Jimmy. And I'm like, I'm not Jimmy. And
like,
my mom and sister still call me Jimmy sometimes, which confuses my son, who is Jimmy. My dad goes by Jim, but he's the only person who calls me Jim. But something weird actually happened today. The freaking contractor at work came by because my dad runs the service department and everything, and he's working with some contractors. And so the one guy, the contractor who came in, called me Jimmy, and his other guy who was with him, introduced himself and, hey, I'm James, and he's like, oh. He's like, and I'm like, yeah, no, I go by James. It's like, I don't even know why the hell he called me why he said that my son Jimmy, because he doesn't call me Jimmy. He calls me Jim. So I don't know where the hell that came from. He's like the only one who calls me Jim. I have to answer to like 4 different names.
Hey, I understand that. I got 3 first names that get shuffled around at work. I'm like, I just respond to whatever. It's like when people be like, oh,
hey, Patty.
Yeah, but whatever. They'll be like, my biggest pet peeve is when people like will try to shorten my name, like they'll call. I'm like, oh, Mr. They'll call me John. I'm like, no, I don't go by John. Never in my life do I go by John. My first name is Jonathan, and so that's my superhero name, Jonathan. And then I'm Jonathan Kent, and this is Jimmy Olsen. Bam. I'm gonna call you Jam from now on. Jam.
All right.
Jam. J-A-M. Jam.
Now I gotta. That's what I thought my my Kryptonian name was gonna be. Jam-L.
Yeah, I like it. I like Jam-L. That's cool. That's what it's gonna be. From the house of.
Then people just call me Jamel. You don't look like Jamel.
You're Jam-L. Jam-E-L-L-E. Jam-L.
Yeah.
All right.
One of those alternate worlds where the L is either like a capital L or it's lowercase el or it's capital E, capital L.
Oh, you have an extra LE, so it's Jam.
Yeah.
All right, let's kick off some news. First piece of news. Peacemaker season 2 is set to premiere in August 2025. Which is kind of a bummer when you think about it. Like, it's a month after Superman, which will be exciting. Don't get me wrong. And I mean, it makes sense that it comes out after Superman. But it's just like, just saying that out loud, like August 2025, when we're in November right now. I'm just like, dang, this seems so far away.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, August, it does seem far away. Hopefully it kind of just drives a little interest in wanting to see it. You know, I mean, the first season was really good. I think people are going to want to watch the second season. And by then we should have some idea. We're kicking off the DCU, so hopefully,
I mean,
we'll be on the uptick.
So with Frank Grillo being Rick Flag Sr. in Superman, and then going into Peacemaker, I wonder if Peacemaker season 2 will kind of feel like a continuation of that universe and fill in some gaps, and there'll be some crossover.
Right. Well, so I have a question for you. Have you seen people already nitpicking at the inconsistency and continuity because of Frank Grillo's hair? Because it's not white like the animation.
They addressed that during the panel.
They did, yes, they did.
Because they would have, but Frank was already working on something else, and he couldn't color change his hair.
Yeah, so, scheduling with other projects made it so he couldn't, color his hair. So, but people are like, "Oh, inconsistencies already." It's like, you guys are like, you're literally looking for something to complain about. Like, that's literally something honestly beyond his control, just because he's a working actor. Like,
after our conversation last week, I would just to be that person, I would just write in a line of dialogue when you first see Rick Flag Sr. show up. Someone goes, "Oh, he colored his hair." Boom, done.
Yeah. So, ADR, like, oh, he dyed his hair.
Boom, hair dye. Okay.
Yeah.
Hair dye. That's it. We talked about a lot of last week about hair dye. We brought it back.
Oh, come on. Like, contractual obligations. DC. All right. We know this. Henry Cavill, Justice League, Mustache Gate. Like, that was, like, if they would have put him in a beard, it would have been so much better. It would have been so easy. But no, like, he could have grown the freaking beard for that. You know what I mean? Like, he could have grown the beard for that. They wouldn't have even had to digital it. All he had to do was have a beard. But they had to do all that crap. And it's scheduling stuff behind the scenes that they have no control over.
I think Frank was still finishing Yellowstone, I think it was, or something.
I think that's what it was. I think that's what it was. I don't remember the project, but I think that was it.
But we also, I mean, Creature Commandos coming out, but I'll ask you this question. It could be possible that Creature Commandos takes place at a different time. We don't know, like, if continuity wise it goes, Creature Commandos, Superman, Peacemaker season 2 could be something, but all right. So the next thing is James Gunn has the Superman trailer ready. He said it's on his hard drive.
Yeah, buddy.
The other thing I read today, and would take this with a grain of salt, because I think it's true, but I don't know for sure, is that Nicholas Hoult will be voicing a young Lex Luthor that will appear in Creature Commandos at some point. So not sure how that works. That's literally all I saw, and I didn't have time to check into it. Now, the next part, that's all I have for news per se. The next part is we are going to discuss the Penguin. We're not going to go super in depth with it, but we are going to touch on
not Penguin. Episode by episode, character by character breakdown, but I think discussing the series as a whole with spoilers and everything, because I want to talk spoilers.
Yeah, we're gonna just we're gonna talk about it. So everybody, if you haven't finished Penguin, sorry, jump ahead, but we're gonna talk Penguin now.
And if you haven't, what are you doing? Like,
yeah, what are you doing for life? Why aren't you like the rest of us and
revolve around appointment television?
Yeah. Jeez. Of course you call yourself a man.
Yeah, no, definitely definitely. I mean, spoiler free off the top. Like, I thought it was a pretty damn good, amazing show.
Is it? I mean, this is
No.
top tier show.
Mhm.
This is keep going, James. Just I'm excited.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah. I mean, damn good show. Great show. I loved every single episode. The characterizations, you know, from where we end in the Batman, where we pick up in this story, and where we go. It had some twists and turns. It was and Colin Farrell acting through those prosthetics. It's fantastic. Like he is phenomenal. And Kristen Milioti, good lord, like I've liked her in everything I've seen her in, but she took it to a whole nother level in this show, and she is gorgeous, and her costuming in this show was amazing.
One thing with her costuming, especially, is they really found a way with her hair and with her costuming to reflect the character's growth and where she was each time.
Oh yeah, the first episode she's in a white suit. It's buttoned all the way up to her neck, and she's completely covered. And then by the time she takes her turn, I think it was episode 4, she comes out, she's got her hair cut, she's got this dress that's got a super low cut in the middle, and that yellow dress, like,
She's got the dress, it's got the cut on it.
You can see her scars, the ones on her arms and shoulders and her neck.
But then after that, every time you see her, it's a different, more open outfit, but it's more vibrant with color. It's more vibrant with how it shows her and how she displays herself. Definitely something different and unique each time. And then her hair gets that horrible haircut. Like, I like her hair in the middle, but like the last haircut looked like it was trying to be like a mullet. But yeah, mullets. We know how that is. All right.
Electric mullets.
Yeah, we do. That's where we talk about James when he's not there to love our accolades, how we brag about him and his greatness. So, Penguin, I actually I was listening to the official podcast for it with the creators and writers, directors, actors. It was the first time I've done that for an HBO show. Highly recommend it. It was awesome.
That is one I haven't listened to. I listened to a few different ones that talked about it every week, but
I just listened to the official one because I was like the inside of the writing process, and I think because it focused a lot on the writer creator Lauren LaFranc.
If you want a really good one and a really fun one to listen to, go listen to Streaming Things. They did a good series on it. They'll have you cracking up the whole time, and they do a pretty good coverage.
So here's the quick news about that, then we'll talk about the Penguin. All right, first things first. Matt Reeves says they are having early talks about a potential season 2 of the Penguin. I don't really know if I want season 2.
I don't know that we need a season 2,
unless
but I think that what they can do with the world and honestly expand that the underground area, I mean, even bring in somebody else rival, maybe even like a Black Mask or something if possible.
If you did a season 2, I think you'd either have to do it after the Batman 2.
Yeah.
Or it would be something where it's kind of going concurrent with the Batman 2. To where part of it might be during the Batman 2 and then the rest of it's after or something like that.
Right. Well, Colin Farrell has said since that came out that he has signed on for Batman 2 and 3 and that in Batman 2, he's got like 5 or 6 scenes. Is how it was explained to him at this point. So that seems like he's not like a major character. He's not your primary antagonist.
Right. And I don't think he should be. I just think he should be there and present and represents, because that gives, like I said, if you run it concurrent, what I would try to do is if I would do another season with Penguin, I would do it kind of concurrent with the Batman 2, and I would introduce like a new detective on the police force, like a Bullock or something. And that's kind of the antagonist to the Penguin, is the police in season 2, since he's kind of, got with the mob. But
right.
Also, this real quick, the Penguin limited series is releasing a 4K steelbook on March 17th. I am definitely going to buy it.
Yes.
And add it to my DC collection, because physical media, yes.
Physical media all around. So, well, we're gonna talk spoilers about it now.
And now we're gonna talk spoilers.
Okay.
Because the last piece of like news clipping is kind of where it ends and what it sets up. So now we're just gonna have an open discussion on the Penguin. James, take her away.
Okay. Well, I mean, so the show
Good job, James. All right. Now
right. Awesome. Moving on. Great show. I mean, just the way that it honestly, the only thing, and it's not necessarily a negative for me, all in all, because Mark Strong is a fantastic actor and he's a great villain. But having to recast him when he only had 2 scenes and a couple of pictures taken for the entire show, I think was pretty it was kind of ridiculous. I mean, just have him recast like that. But
I think I read it was a John Turturro thing, because he didn't want the character against violence against women. I'm pretty sure that his Carmine did more violence against women than what was alluded to or even happened from.
In the Batman, he was on recording strangling Annika.
And then
he tried to strangle Selena
physically. So
in frame.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then in this one, it was alluded to that it was told that he was the hangman. He's the one who killed all these women. He strangled them. And then put Sophia into the institution. Which is wild, she did talk to a member of the press, but nothing in like not in a way that he was figuring she did, you know what I mean? Like not in a manner to. It was honestly more of a for her it was honestly more of a fact-finding conversation, for her. So she was literally on the end trying to figure things out, and he gets her put in Arkham, and she spends 10 years in Arkham, where she gets tortured on the regular by inmates and the doctors and things like that, and it's pretty much said that it was instigated by Carmine.
It's pretty messed up.
Yeah. I mean, so the series starts, Penguin tries to kind of go get what he believes is his, or he can take from Carmine's place. Alberto shows up. He kills Alberto. It's a big to-do on like who killed Alberto or where is he? And then they find out he's dead. And then he frames the Maronis for killing Alberto. He joins Sophia to sell a new drug called Bliss. grown from mushrooms, and it's a drug that they gave the people in Arkham. It keeps them really, really happy and docile, and and then that blows up in his face, and he tries to have Sal Maroni killed in prison. He escapes. They find, Sophia finds out that he was the one who killed Alberto, and I mean, it's war, when she kills her whole family, I can just keep going point by point by point.
Yeah,
here.
I mean, she kills her own family, and then she basically.
I don't want to rush through it too fast or go too slow.
Well, we could meditate on this show an episode by episode, but there's so much nuances of how Oz takes a boy, Victor, who he sees a lot of himself in, because Victor has a stutter as his kind of deformity, as well as Oz had his leg. And, there's some really interesting parallels between the opening, or not the first episode and the last episode, of the interactions between Oz and Victor.
Yeah.
Of them sitting together. And
yeah, the relationship between Oz and Vic through the whole show, I like you said, the kinship he sees in him, the opportunity to give him a chance. I think he needs to give him a chance, but I also, I think he wants to give him a chance, but I also think that with everything going on, he needs somebody in his corner. At this point, with everything that had just happened in Gotham and the power vacuum with Carmine dead, there is an opening, and he really doesn't have anybody in his corner. In this series, we see everybody keep putting him down. Alberto puts him down. Johnny Vitti puts him down. The new boss, I forget his name, he puts him down. Sophia puts him down. Luca, he puts him down. Sophia puts him down. So he's really pushing back against that. And for the majority of the show, he's very manipulative and conniving, but there are things that endear you to him. His relationship with Victor, he has some sympathies, that you get around his mother, how she's got Louis body's dementia.
Mm-hmm.
So you see some things that lend some sympathy to his character, and then you get to episode 7, and that's all gone. That's you find out that his world is kind of, he made his world the way it is. He's always been this person, lying, manipulating, conniving,
Mm-hmm.
When they show that he killed his brothers.
Mm-hmm.
It's
kind of interesting, because he killed his brothers, but yet he's responsible for his brother's death.
Yeah, he's responsible for his brother's death. When I watch it, I kind of go back and forth, did he kill them on purpose, or did he just not care that he did kill them? You know what I'm saying? I think he just locked them down there.
And then, I listened to Lauren LaFranc talk about it, and it's he did it as an impulse because they were making fun of him, and he locked them down there, and then
because he internalizes.
But he doesn't.
Go ahead.
No, he doesn't admit it to himself. He won't admit anything that he's done to himself. So, in the last episode, when they what do you call it? When she's holding Francis and everything, holding her hostage, and she's like, "Tell the truth, Oz. Tell the truth, Oz." Sophia is, and he's like, "What are you talking about? What are you talking about? What is this?" She explained it like Oz couldn't say it out loud because he doesn't even it's that like he doesn't maybe even realize what he did. Like he's blocked it or compartmentalized it so much. And
I think it's more or less like
if
you
he
believe
admits
he believes his own lie.
it's
So,
if he admits it and breaks it, if he says it out loud, it breaks the truth, and then that's a whole flood of things that he. And she talked about like the choices. Like Oz believes what he believes in the moment. That's why like a lot of times he'll flip the script. Like one of the best versions is, he has that moment with Sophia, and they're like kind of like rebonding, and then as that happens, the Falcons or the Maronis pull up, and then Vic hits him with the car, and he's like, gets in the car, and Vic's like, "What about Sophia?" And he's like, "F Sophia," and they drive off.
Yeah.
Like, right after he just had this moment with Sophia
of trying to like reconnect with it. Yeah.
So Oz believes what Oz wants to believe when he wants to believe it.
Yeah. Like I said, like I see it very much in like the if you lie to yourself enough, you believe it enough that if you believe the lie, it's not a lie,
Mm-hmm.
At least like if it were to be like, I don't know, lie detector test, like if you believe it enough, you lie about it enough, and it's just ingrained. It's your truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when he does that, and she's like, I hate you. I've always hated you. I've always known what you did. He was gonna let her get her finger cut off in that moment just to not say what he did, even though she knew. Man, like I said, we could go from like episode to episode, character to character. But like when it comes down to it, so in the end of the season, I guess there's 3 bits there that I could focus in on. One being well, maybe 4. One being when he goes into the city council chambers and talks to the councilman, like his wordplay and manipulation is bar none. Like
I mean, he basically gives them everything they want.
Yeah, the pieces are there, and he gives them everything they want in a tangible way. And screw if it's true or not, because the pieces can say that it is.
I mean, it comes down to he sets Sophia up to make everything out to be her. Because like my favorite, he goes, "Yeah, you'll find the body of Sal Maroni down there."
Yeah, so
and it's all speculative enough that what he says can be proved, and you can't really go against it. There's only one person who knows the truth that Oz has to deal with.
Yeah, so he's in the tunnels. Sophia's truck comes in. She sets off a bomb that blows a big hole in the center of Crown Point, and blows up, kills people, and caves in the street and all kinds of stuff. Oz survives, and just before that, Maroni had died, and he had killed him. Killed him. So Maroni's body was down there. Sophia's car was down there, blown into bits. So his pieces are, you'll find Maroni's body down there. It was his drug operation. You can find pieces of Sophia's car down there. All this stuff that's been going on is a war between the Maronis and the Falcons. And so he just lays it at his feet. It was brilliant manipulation on a scale that you would love to only see in TV, and I'll leave it at that.
Yep.
But So that one is really awesome. That part is really great. Vic in this final episode is awesome. The way he talks to the bosses, the way he talks to Penguin when he's cleaning and stapling up his wound in the hospital to get him going out to get him to continue fighting. And then the way that he goes out.
So, we had Vic step up. Like right before this, we see Vic. What do you call it? You see Vic driving his motorcycle. He has a gun. We end up seeing him take out Squid, some low-life thug that's kind of been harassing Vic. And, Victor's a character that we got to experience a lot through. He was the heart of the show. He's the heart of the show.
Yeah, he's our audience point of view. He's the guy who's doing what he needs to survive, but he's also the guy who has a sympathetic heart in this show.
It's sad because he's doing everything he needs to do.
Yeah.
And he let him and Oz are buddies kind of thing. Like there's the line in the episode was like, people will say our names. Like this whole time is Oz is trying to be like Rex Calabrese. And he says, people will say our names. Victor Aguilar, Oz Cobb. And yeah, it's pretty messed up.
It is, and it's actually Victor's idea to have all the seconds in command, which is like the third thing I want to talk about, but it kind of connects to the second thing, which is Victor's death. So Victor, after everything goes down, after Penguin comes out on top, everybody's dead and gone. They're getting drunk by the pier, sitting together like they were at the end of the first episode. And Victor says, you gave me a shot, and he stepped up and he said, you're like family. And as soon as he said, you're like family, he's like, Oz, like he's seen him at his most vulnerable. He knows his weaknesses. He's the only person who can literally flip on him. He's the only one who knows the real things that have happened throughout this entire thing that contradict the official story of the Maronis and Sophia. And he can't have that weakness, and he can't have that and he can't have that person have something on him. And he freaking kills Victor, grabs him and chokes him to death, steals the money out of his wallet like a robbery, and tosses his ID in the water.
Yep. But it's more than just that too. If you think about because he says, Vic, I can't have you come with me on this one. As he says, like, this wasn't for nothing. And, as he's killing Vic, like you said, like Oz, I think one thing that you have to remember about Oz is for Oz, everything he does is transactional. So our relationship is based on the fact that I do something for you, you do something for me. Boom, bada bing, bada boom, transactional. Okay. But we saw how his mom was used against him. We saw what he did to his brothers. We saw that Oz, anytime someone would get close to him, he was not, he was comfortable with flipping on them. Okay. Yeah. So the fact that as soon as his relationship with Vic changes from being transactional, because, he was paying Vic, and now it's like more than that, Oz can't take that because like you said, Vic, Vic knows Oz's weakness. Vic knows everything there is to know about Oz.
Yeah.
So Oz can't have that.
Yeah.
He can't be seen as anything but the Penguin and whatever he chooses to be.
Yeah. So when I saw that, I was just, when that happened, I was like, and I called it, you know, I mean, I said Vic was going to die, and I said his mother was going to die, but you know, she ends up having a stroke and she's a vegetable.
And I mean, earlier you go back, she asked Oz, she said, "Don't let me basically become a vegetable.
Yeah.
You know, don't let me be this."
Yeah.
And
What
he's
people
like,
who I have tend to end up like, I don't want to be like that.
and he's like, yeah, mom, yeah,
And he
okay.
promises he would kill her if she were to ever become a vegetable.
And he goes back on that.
Yeah.
And he keeps her at the end of this series. His mom and Sophia are basically in a fate worse than death. They're in their own personal hell.
Yeah. And so this show is not a drama, you know, this show is a tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
Like Victor with a good heart does what he needs to do. He ends up dead. You know, what his family didn't want for him, he ended up dead. Sophia, you know, she would rather die than go back to jail or to Arkham. And she ends up back in Arkham. His mother, she doesn't want to end up a vegetable. She doesn't want to end up, you know, paralyzed. And she ends up paralyzed, and he doesn't fulfill his promise on putting her out of her misery at that point. So yeah, it's very tragic. The only person who gets what they want in this series is Oz. And he got what he wanted at everyone else's expense.
Yep.
Everyone else's expense. He used everybody from episode 1 all the way till the end. You know, he's got control of all of the gangs. So where we go to is number 2s, all the number 2s of everybody, all of the leaders. Link, he shoots Zhao in his head. The Irish guy gets strangled by his number 2. The Latino lady, she gets beat down. She gets beat to death by her number 2. You know, guy gets his throat slashed. There's, yeah, like they take all of them out, and that it's a beautiful scene because Oz talking to Sophia about, you know, people who do all the work and get none of the praise, get stepped on, get pushed into the shadows, you know, like.
But what's the irony to that? The irony is that's exactly what Sophia had started to do when she became the Gigante family.
Yeah.
Because she went to them and was trying to reestablish the way that it worked. You know, she gave all that money to the people but she still couldn't do the same. She couldn't take it to the level that Oz did.
Yeah.
Because she wasn't there, but it was like he was almost taking a play from her book in a way.
Right. And she was, the only thing with her is she was actually ready to walk away.
Yeah.
Like, she was ready to walk away. She wanted what she wanted. She wanted the revenge, but she was ready to walk away. She got the revenge, and she was going to walk away from the whole cycle that she was stuck in.
It was when she saw her cousin in the children's home, and she realized she was turning her cousin Gia into her.
Yeah.
And she was like ready to be done. And she took her time. She was too slow. If she just would have let Oz go,
yep,
he would have been out of there. But
yeah, so that was it. And then kind of like my final point on it was, in the end, we see Oz, tuxedo, the button-up vest, the top hat, the trench coat, you know. the umbrella in the it wasn't any kind of umbrella like we know the Penguin has, but an umbrella because it is Gotham and it rains a lot. And he was in a nice suit and everything. It screamed Penguin. You know what I mean? It screamed classic Penguin to me in a way that I did not expect from this show or this world because of the way the Batman is and the way Oz was in that show, the way that the suit and things kind of look practical. There's a thing that the Batman I find extremely good. There's the aesthetic aside, I find the Batman and the world extremely good because there are things that are very comic book and higher than reality, because it is comic book. You know what I mean? There is no need to over explain everything, and nothing. It exists because it has to exist. It doesn't need an explanation, which is why the Nolan trilogy is like, I feel this. In my opinion, I like the Batman more than the Nolan trilogy in those respects. They're great movies, and I will never contest that.
I think it just comes down to we went from a time where things were crazy and we were trying to ground it. So you kind of swing the pendulum the other way where you're grounding it and you're explaining how this is real and how it can be in real life. And now we're at a different point where we're like, okay, you can make it real, but we don't have to be over explained how it works.
Yeah. But the aesthetic and things, you know what I mean? Like, so in the Batman, you get Pattinson in the cowl so much in the movie, aesthetics aside, you get the early detective Batman. You get these gadgets that just are, you get him doing things obviously that no human can do. But because he's Batman, he can. And then we know the Riddler, like he's very much the Riddler, but he doesn't look like the Riddler. But the thing that makes kind of like these supervillains the way they are is they win, they get over on everybody. The Riddler won. He blew the seawall, he killed a lot of people. He caused this massive chaos. He killed Carmine Falcone. And then the Penguin, he killed all these people. He got over on all these people. In the end, he's the Penguin. He's the king. And the way that he looked, it just screamed so classic Penguin. I was like, I did not expect that, the way for it to look that way. It feels comic book without having to look like cheesy comic book.
I agree. I
loved it.
That he had gotten like in the battle, like his eye damaged or something. And he talks like, and he's having trouble seeing to where like at the end, he has his monocle.
He has a monocle. Yeah. I mean, that's here or there. I mean, that could just be a Burgess Meredith. You know what I mean?
I mean, that's in the comics. I mean, every Penguin had one at one point.
Oh yeah, I know. Some point or another Penguin does, but also at other points he doesn't. I
mean, name me a Penguin that doesn't have a monocle. At least at some point.
I mean, at least at some point. I mean, in the last bit of the in some of the Tom King that I have read, I haven't read the whole thing. He does not have a monocle in there.
I did. He does at some point.
He does at some point, but not all the time.
But not all the time. He doesn't. That's the thing about a monocle. It hangs low. You can just pull it up and okay.
Yeah. Cool. That's just another piece of prosthetic on top of all of the others. So what's the difference?
Comic was like, all right, guys.
Like, we got to draw the line somewhere here.
Brian and I were talking, and one thing that we had come up with that we really liked, the idea was, and I kind of wish they had explored this, is why the Penguin has the umbrella. And it goes back to the rain and like the idea of the rain is what killed his brothers and he was responsible. So the idea is the umbrella creates like this barrier, like an armor, and he keeps the rain off of him as like this reminder of like
Yeah.
keeping out and stuff. Like
That's something you would have in like a novelization or inside of a graphic novel,
I mean,
or something that you would say like that you would have like as a character bit
you would
from
just
behind the scenes. It wouldn't be anything that you would be like, oh yeah, he's holding the umbrella because of that's
no,
not something
you would do it through the imagery. Man, I'm telling you, you have to listen to all the stuff that's in there through listening to the writers talk
yeah.
and all and what they created with Oz and everything. Like, because it really puts on more depth to things that you don't think about that's
Right.
in there.
Yeah.
But you've said something else that has to be looked at is you have these crime families who operate with their codes and their rules, and Oz is the rise of the supervillain. So he is not your crime family gangster. He's a new level. And that's what this story is the rise of the supervillain away from just the regular villains. But
Yeah.
we can keep going.
Oz is the king. He controls the streets now. He even lives in a penthouse in a building called the Crown.
Yeah,
it's French, but it's the Crown.
it's got to be repaired. And let's talk about that final shot that you can see kind of here is Oz, the pan out of Oz's apartment. He's conquered everybody.
Which I love the architecture of that building. It was beautiful.
Oh, it reminds me
of Gothic. It was great.
It reminds me of being like in one of the Arkham games, like Arkham City, just going around. And then all of a sudden the bat signal comes on and you see it. I'm like, okay, sweet. But this is the last point here. It says elements the Penguin set up for Batman 2. Bella Royale has set up an anti-crime corruption task force. Oz is now the kingpin of Gotham and has political aspirations. Batman now has his eye on the Penguin, and Selina and Sophia might be involved together because Sophia got a letter in Arkham from a woman named Selina Kyle saying she's her half-sister.
Yes. Which is pretty dope.
All right, let's get into some comics here. We are finishing up our last trade. And this will end our new 52 technically, because we have one more book to do, which is the final of the new 52, but it's the Road to Rebirth book next. But this will
the only run we didn't go through is the Justice League run.
We didn't do the Justice League. We didn't do the Batman Superman because that one gets really convoluted. Because it starts on Earth 2, then shifts.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll go back one day and do the Justice League. But Superman, Wonder Woman Volume 5. And what's funny is this volume, one of the earlier pages when you first open this volume, the first page is from the last volume of them laying in bed.
Yes, it is.
But man, what the heck? Why is my thing being weird? Okay, so how did you feel about this trade? We'll just start there.
Well, so we kind of jumped around a little bit. First, we started very early on, and then it jumped farther into. So it started before anybody knew about their relationship, and then it jumped to a point where it jumped to the point where he was depowered, and then it got into the Vandal Savage stuff. So this trade kind of jumps through 3 different time periods that we've gone through in these stories.
My favorite issue
ultimately
is the first issue.
Okay.
Because it's the one that basically is all these little side things that connect to, like you said, early on. It's like Clark sitting on his porch recounting the story. It's all these little adventures that they had leading up to where they are now.
Yeah.
I think it was an annual, is what I think it is, because the way it's a little bit longer than a regular issue. I think it was at the annual.
I think so. I think there was an annual in here.
But continue.
I mean, ultimately, with this trade, just because, and it's got it, and I think it's mostly because of the way of us reading them, and the talk we've had about how so many chapters of these trades are just a few chapters from an overarching story that is spread across 2 or 3 different books, at least. And just that knowledge and trying to place the chapters in where they go, I was just more annoyed, honestly, reading it. I was like, this is a terrible way to sell these books, you know?
Yeah.
It's a terrible way to put these together. So there were some interesting stories, though. I mean, like you said, the first issue with the annual with all the different stories and times throughout their relationship.
That's the best one, because it starts off where it's like Clark sitting on his porch, and what it is, it's all these little moments that are like the moment before another panel or another book, or the moment after, like right when they first, it's like from a different angle when they first kiss, one of their first times at the Justice League headquarters trying to keep it a secret, Clark telling his parents. We see that he actually wanted to marry her at one point. A dinner date with Arthur and Mira. Them fighting a demigod together. And we see Clark with the ring, and then decide, because basically it's how Clark finds out that she is, what do you call it?
That she is the god of war.
God of war, and he's unhappy about it, and how that destroys their relationship. And then, we go.
And then also Clark's attitude.
His attitude. Yeah,
we know he's a little more. We know that he's been a little more hot-headed throughout the New 52.
Yeah,
he's very unwilling to listen to reason and get out of his own way, get out of his own head and his ideas. Which, I mean, Superman is hard-headed, but he's hard-headed. He's hard-headed when it comes to the job and saving people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that, he takes that as serious above anything else. And he's hard-headed, and he will stand toe-to-toe with anybody when he knows that he's right in that instance. But with his relationships and things like that in these books, and especially in these issues, he's very like a lie of omission is still a lie. And like how long ago was that? Has she been hiding it for months, or has it maybe been just a handful of days or a couple of weeks and she hasn't told you because she hasn't figured out the best way to tell you or something like that? But it's like the end of the freaking world. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's his attitude. I mean, as we all know, as we will learn, this is technically James, the Superman of Red. His energy.
I am hot-headed.
So, but yeah, and I mean, then we get the little, in that last little section of that issue is when we have him with his depowered, where she has to go and fight, and how he feels. And I feel like instead of being able to explore it, his how he feels, being the almighty powerful, to being less and less than, and Wonder Woman's still powerful. He just comes off like a jerk instead of someone who's dealing with an issue of feeling important, validated, and needed.
Yeah. I don't feel that Superman most of the time needs to feel validated. He basically yells at her, "I'm not helpless. I can still contribute. I can still fight. I am more than just my powers."
I just feel like
And
it's not earned.
yeah,
Like it's like if this story, even with everything we've read, it feels awkward. Like if maybe this was in a different collection or something, it would feel more earned, but it doesn't. And
yeah, he's like sitting in the dark, like stewing, waiting for her to show back up.
the,
That's
the
not.
term the term James would be brooding. Okay, like
Yeah,
Bruce, he is brooding.
yeah.
Um, and then we see basically
Superman sulks. He doesn't brood.
exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, there's a difference.
He got that deep man cry.
Yeah.
If you've ever seen Going the Distance, great movie, Justin Long and Jason Sudeikis and Charlie Day. And then we see that he closes the picture album on the porch where he's kind of like talking to himself, to his parents, and goes upstairs and puts the engagement ring back. It was his mom's that he was going to give to Wonder Woman. And that, like I said, that's the best one I think out of all of them. Then the one after that is
him going through challenges with some gods of Olympus.
With the gods of Olympus, she is the god of war, because that's when she has that new costume. And their way they design the Olympian gods is very interesting. The way Azarella and Cliff was it Cliff Chang, I think, did the art when they did New 52 Wonder Woman.
Doug Menke.
No, I mean not here.
Oh, okay.
When they did the New 52 Wonder Woman book, when they designed it, it was, I think, Cliff Chang and Azarello, because the New 52 Wonder Woman book, her whole book is just her and the Olympians.
Yeah, that's one book that I've wanted to go back and read, and I haven't read the Wonder Woman New 52 stuff.
I read it. It's been a long time, but we see that Clark goes through all the challenges with the different gods, and it's pretty interesting. I mean, it's neat how they split him. Where at one point he's like half Clark, half Superman. There's one point he's back in his old uniform, and the most interesting is when he talks to Eros, and then basically they say he survived and he is fully, completely immortal. And it's interesting how they even draw the depowered Superman. Like, he's got facial hair, his eyes are a little brighter, his hair is shorter, he's scruffier. He just has a whole different way about him. But other than that, the last two issues that we really read was with the Vandal Savage stuff that doesn't really work, other than it's Superman and Wonder Woman working together against Vandal Savage. So I guess if you were reading the whole Savage Dawn collection, you would kind of get a sense of when the Superman Wonder Woman book is, because it's them working together.
Yeah, you would get it. So in this, you've got in the trade, you've got previously in Superman number 48 and Action number 49. So it gives you those little bits in between that chapter. But if you were reading the Savage Dawn, you would get all of those books chapter by chapter. You'd get Superman 48, then Action 49, and then you would jump into your issue Skyfall, whatever issue number this is for Superman Wonder Woman.
Skyfall?
Yeah. It is cool, though, this book, these chapters of this story in the Superman Wonder Woman book are some pretty good heavy action chapters. And there were little bits there's part of a resolution in one of these issues where like we come back in the one issue of Superman, and I think it was the Action book, but we come back in that Action book and he's got all of his powers back. And he's just, doing his thing. But in this one, you get to see that, you come back here. So I think it's in one of the other ones that he gets the powers back. But in this one, you come back and you get to see like that comet is there. So while Superman is going after Vandal Savage as he's trying to get powered up, which we get to see that powered up chapter in another book, we get to see that the comet is killing his children.
Yeah.
While it's
it's
powering him up, he's just sacrificing all of his children.
So what James and I are saying is, don't read it by the trades. We have talked before.
Yeah, read them by the arc.
Read them by the arc.
The first groups of trades are okay. The first half of the trades in the New 52, those are good. But
It's like to the first event.
Yeah.
It's like once you get to the events, it all is jacked up. Because the last one we read,
you got to do event after event.
the last one we read, what Trade 4 was good because it was all self-contained stories. But that's pretty much it for this one. I will say I actually do really like the look of Wonder Woman for the New 52. It's a little different than like her traditional, but I still think it's a good look, which is hilarious.
I like the look, and I love the God of War look. She's got some good looks in New 52.
What I think's hilarious is like when Jim Lee did that first. I'm looking at it right here on my desk. Drawing with all the New 52
pants one and stuff.
Yeah, they gave her pants, and then she never wore pants ever.
Yeah, until the God of War costume.
Yeah. All right. So the next up is next week we will be exploring the final days of Superman. But you know what that means, James? You know what time it is? Do you know what time it is, James?
Hammer time.
No.
Oh. Okay.
Not yet. It is time for Superman and Lois. All right. Only an hour into our episode. Woo! I will say this. So Solomon and I we are rewatching this season. We are 2 episodes in, and as of this recording, we will watch more tomorrow night. Because I'll have time. We don't have play practice and everything. It's really fun to watch it with him because he's old enough to understand, but he doesn't know all the tropes and stuff that like we know, or all the behind the scenes crap like we do. And
right.
It's just great because to watch him is like watching it through a whole new set of eyes. And it's just been very enjoyable so far. But
right. Well, yeah, he doesn't know where the idea of the death and return of Superman comes and goes, and what his life is afterwards, how it changes or doesn't change, things like that. So the show is very unique, especially as a first watch for him.
So the new episode, season 4, episode 7, A Regular Guy. After some concerning interactions in town, Clark is determined to protect the secret that he's Superman, a task complicated by Jonathan and Jordan. Lois considers the future of the Gazette after Chrissy proposes something drastic. All right. This episode has a very high rating on IMDb as a 9.2. I think before we break it down, James, just overall rating of this episode, what would you give it?
Oh, I mean, 9.2. Yeah, 9 easy. I mean, yeah. If you want to rate it like that, yeah, 9 easy. Honestly, I don't think there's an episode I'd given this season yet below an 8.5.
Yeah, this is definitely
or a 9.
So, 2 things I'm going to say before we kick off. One, I really like Michael Bishop as John. I like him better, and I wish he had been here the whole series.
Yeah.
Nothing against Jordan Ellis. He did a good job, but Michael Bishop just feels more like he's Jordan's brother, the character Jordan. His
Yes.
Jonathan feels more in line with Jordan, like they're actually brothers. And I wish that he had been through the whole series with us.
Me too. Come to find out, he was like second choice. He was like second pick at the time. And somehow he just missed out on it, just lost out on it.
I'm just, it boggles my mind. Like, he would be the actor if I did something crazy, if they were doing like longer seasons, still part of the Arrowverse, and they did something where they went to the other Earth and saw where it was supposed to be pre-crisis, where they had one Jonathan child. Michael Bishop's the actor I would use because he kind of looks like the other two fused together, and then have you pull apart Jonathan and create two different people, and that's where you get Jordan and the other Jonathan.
So yeah, I mean, just for that sake, I mean, he's done so good. Like you said, Jordan did great before. He's done
I'm gonna
so
call him
much
Ellis.
better.
It's confusing. I'm calling him Ellis.
He did so much. He's just done so much better. Like I said, and it's not the other guy's fault at all. And then just for looks sake, like, he looks like Jordan's brother. He looks like he could be Clark and Lois's child. The other actor, Jordan, he didn't look like he could be their child. He didn't look like a twin to Jordan, even in a fraternal sense, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, all around, if there was any misstep on this show in its whole run, that's probably it, is not picking him as your first choice.
The other thing I was going to say is, as I was watching it, Jania goes, I love this. She says, this is my favorite thing of Superman I've ever watched with you. And I would rewatch this entire show with you. And Jania has watched at least, like, she's watched, majority of Smallville. Eventually, I think we're going to do a whole rewatch, me and her. But she's watched the majority of Smallville with me. She's watched all the movies with me. She has watched cartoons. She's seen at least something of every version of Superman. Like, she's watched a couple of episodes of George Reeves with me. She watched some Kirk Allen. She's watched a couple of Superboys. You know what I'm saying? So she has watched everything with me, enough to make that a valid point.
Right.
All right. Time to break out the handy dandy Superman notebook. So the episode starts out with flashbacks, and we see a couple different angles, like his first shirt rip when he had the Fleischer costume, and we see green car losing control, and he goes after it. That cuts into the the opening scene.
Pilot, yeah.
We see him shopping with Denise, and he's watching the news. He's like, oh, I left my wallet in the car. I'll be right back. And we see a shirt rip, and he takes off. And then he comes back. Oh, you're back already? He's like, yeah, I just went to the parking lot.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, okay. And we see another shirt rip, and then title card. 3 shirt rips before the title card. And Jania goes, you're awfully obsessed with a guy ripping his shirt. I'm like, it's Superman, Jania. She's like, all right, Tyler, calm down.
Yeah, the premise of this episode of him having to hide his secret, the life he's lived to hide his secret, the things he's sacrificed to hide his secret, and what he is ultimately doing now to keep his secret, and what it's doing to his family to keep his secret, in this episode. I mean, that's what the entire thing revolves around. It's so good. Tyler does so great with it. I just ran to the parking lot, and
this is his episode. I mean, like,
and he's like, ow,
episode.
ow, I sprained something.
Or when he later tries to convince the coach that when coach is saying like, yeah, and he like pretends to slam his finger. He's ow, and he's like, get some ice, and the coach is looking like, what the? And you can see that it's weighing on him. Like he doesn't want to do this anymore. Like it's weighing on him.
It was one thing when he was just oblivious, when he was just Clark, and he was just, people never thought of him that way.
Yeah.
Now he has to lie to their faces and try to convince them that he's not. Mm-hmm. It's a completely different story. It's a completely different element to that idea. You know, it's one thing when people are just, you know, like he says in Smallville, I was just Clark Kent. So who would even suspect otherwise?
You know, he says several times the secret's very important. And, you know, this is the episode that we get flashbacks to him in the Daily Planet, and we meet Jimmy Olsen. And that's why I introduced you as my Jimmy Olsen.
Yeah, I know.
But I told Janine, like, this is a perfect use of Jimmy Olsen character. Since we are not, and I like that it is Janet Olsen's brother. I think that's cool. And what I like is, you know, we learned that this was a different Earth, so we knew we weren't getting the same Jimmy that we got on Supergirl.
We weren't getting James. Yes.
Yeah. And you know, we haven't got Jimmy yet, but bringing him in for this episode was great because it showed really, because he says we don't, you know, there's a lot of like really great dialogue of we don't have to be pals, you know, we don't have to be buddies, we don't have to hang out outside of work. He's like, friends hang out outside of work. And it's like Clark struggling to actually have a friend, and we see how much that weighs on him because of the secret. He never got to have like a real friend. You know, and that's what's so interesting, I think, about his dynamic with Lana, is she was his friend and she didn't get to know the secret until later. But, you know, him trying to have a friend and be Superman, because now he's hiding being Superman, not just having powers, but hiding being Superman. And, you know, we get several flashbacks throughout as they start a softball team, which that hit home really hard, having played softball this past summer for my work team, and we sucked, but I had fun.
That's the point, is to have fun.
And, you know, they dropped the line about they're going to play against the Star, and they're going to take back from those people at the Star. So that's kind of great Superman references. Jimmy definitely drops the CK. He gets the CK line. Come on, CK. What do you call it? But the line that I liked is when Clark tells Lois, if I played, I'd be cheating. And she's like, you can be bad. He's like, I could be bad.
Yeah.
He's like, I can bunt.
Yeah.
You know, like, and he becomes the bunt king. And you see the general excitement that he has for being a part of a team and being with people and wanting that connection and wanting to feel a part of things. You know, and I think it's an interesting contrast between the great debate that we have about in Smallville, where Clark wants to play football, you know, in high school, and he can't, and, you know, eventually he does. But the idea that even at Clark's worst, he's still better than everybody else. Yes, it's his natural talent, but if you threw him on, you know, his home planet, he wouldn't be able to play football like that. You know, so, and we kind of ran into that a little bit when Jordan really started developing all of his powers playing football too.
Right. Yeah. So I want to get into the kids and stuff, and especially about the football. But the thing that I loved about this episode, and I think it's something that a lot of people hadn't really thought about over the years, because you just got Superboy, you got Smallville, which is kind of like kind of like maybe your earliest modern inception of this idea of having to hide his powers so much. I mean, of course, you got it in Superman the movie where he couldn't play football, but it was basically that idea, like, you can't do it because it's not fair, like you're not meant for that. You can't do it. It's not fair. Nobody can, people couldn't keep up with you. It's just not, it's not okay. It's unethical to do. But in this episode, and like I said, in Smallville and things, is when Lois explains to the boys didn't get their powers until they were 14 and 16 years old. So they had a childhood, a normal childhood. Clark never had that. For just about his entire life that he can remember, almost his first memories include having powers.
Lois
He got his
got
powers when he was 4. Yeah, he was 4 years old. And also something, and it was reinforced in Man of Steel, is the fear of that, not being able to show who you are, being able to have to hide who you are from everybody, not being able to do things. When he's a little kid, he wasn't allowed to go to birthday parties because what he might do, you know what I mean, to draw attention to himself. The fear of getting that child taken from you, all those kinds of things. Like, he grew up, even though he has nothing to fear because of his abilities and things, he grew up in that constant fear of having to hide his secret his entire life. And in this episode, the things like the tragedy that he has of it's okay, I'm used to it, of having to disappoint people, disappoint his friends, people he wants to be friends with, people he wants to do things with, but he can't, especially after he became Superman and he has to run off at a moment's notice. Is the disappointment that he's lived with his entire life to be who he is and to do what he has to do because of his powers, because of the obligations he feels. Like, it's a completely different scenario when it comes to the boys and it comes to him and his life and his secret.
I mean, it is, like you just said, like, he had to give up so much and to keep the secret because, and in this, we learn in this version, especially, he didn't share that with anyone till Lois. So there wasn't like he had his Pete and his Lana, like we saw in Smallville.
Chloe and
yeah, where
his Alicia and
where people saw that. Like, he kept this to himself until he shared it with Lois. And then that was it, and I like how they point out, like, Dad has friends, Mr. Cushing, Mr. Irons, and they, they make the joke, like, do you see Dad hanging out? And it's this nice little
yeah,
contrast.
When has he ever hung out and had fun?
Yeah, it's this nice contrast of where he is now compared to when we go back and we see how it was with Jimmy, when Jimmy even figures it out. And he's not being mean to Clark, but he just wants Clark to tell him the truth, because he says, it's funny how you're late for the softball games. There's something happens. At the same time, there's a Superman save.
Yeah, and then, so the last game, he just totally skips it, and there is no Superman save.
And he does it just to try to throw Jimmy off. And Jimmy even kind of figures it out, like, okay, but, and then Jimmy says, all right, drinks at Babowski's.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. The Babowski's name drop.
But you see how much it hurts Clark, because he wants to do things and be a part of it. And it was really good. So since we're kind of bouncing around, let's just kind of Jump to at the end of the episode. He goes and there's a big deal. Like, we're kind of spoiling. We know that Clark, we'll talk about that, but like tells his secret, whatever. Okay. But like he meets Jimmy at the diner at the end. And he's like, CK, over here. And Clark sits down and they're having a conversation. He's like, they're catching up on the past, 17 years or something, he says, or
Yeah.
And he says, Bunt? Man, that was genius. And he's like, yeah.
Yeah, I love the way it ended because Jimmy was he was right in it. Like he wanted to be friends with Clark, and we know, he's Superman's pal or whatever. Maybe he's Superman's pal in this, we don't know. But just to see them and like no hard feelings whatsoever.
He's like, I get it, and Jimmy even said, like, I get it. And it's I had a really good friend in high school. Really good friend. I thought we were really close. Okay. And I've never really talked about this much, but I'll share it. And when we were in high school, people start calling him gay and stuff like that. And I would defend him because he was dating a girl. And he was very shy. Well, we were close. He was struggling and he later came out as gay. I wouldn't care. Like, I didn't care. I wish he would have trusted me to know that I got his back no matter what. We were really close. We did competitions in high school together. We did very well in our clubs and stuff, and we actually went to the national competitions. And if he had told me, I got his back, you know what I'm saying? And then years later, I ran into him out and about in Grove City, outside Columbus, and I met his husband and stuff, and it was kind of cool to see him again, but I wish that we had got to stay closer friends and he would have knew that, he could have shared that with me and I would have been supportive. And
yeah.
So now we'll jump back. We kind of talked a little bit through like the Jimmy Olsen of it. I liked him as Jimmy Olsen. There was a cool energy vibe that he had as Jimmy. The one thing I had to laugh is like the actor playing Jimmy is actually taller than Tyler.
I was gonna say that too.
Because I had to double check because I told Janine, I was like, I'm pretty sure Tyler's only 6 feet. And I was like, I gotta check. And Douglas Smith, who plays Jimmy, is 6'2". So I was like, yeah.
I do like the idea of, obviously I think Superman needs to be in good shape. The actor absolutely needs to be in good shape. That's just kind of par for the course. But do they need to be as big as, a bodybuilder or an Ed McGuinness drawing? Absolutely not. Or as big as Henry Cavill was. I don't think they have to be.
No, they don't.
But I like the fact, because Henry Cavill standing across from Ben Affleck is bigger. Just naturally, he is just a bigger guy, taller and wider, just naturally. And that's natural. And so to see Tyler, one of the shortest guys to play Superman, standing with Jimmy Olsen, who's across from him, who's 2-3 inches taller than him, but he's Superman. Like it's not a he doesn't have to be massive to be it's disproportionate anyways. It doesn't matter.
I think any bigger than what Cavill got, I think is too big. And I think Brandon Routh in Superman Returns had that kind of lean muscle look to where he looked, good, but he's probably the smallest I would want Superman to be. Because I would want some definition to him,
Right.
And I think Christopher Reeve was the tallest at 6'4", and I think David is 6'4".
I think so.
And Tyler and I think Dean Cain are both 6 foot. I used to have it all memorized, but everybody's been 6 foot and above. So, because Henry's 6'2".
Yeah.
Why do I care? Dean Cain's 6 foot because I'm 6'3". So, it's the thing I got going for me. Okay.
Tyler's like, it's the one thing I got.
For real, man. It is. And like, I was at the movies one night and George Reeves was 6'1". And this guy stood next to me and he easily had to be like almost 7 feet because I was like,
right.
Yeah,
it's funny.
I walked over to Jania like, this is how the rest of the world feels all the time around me. She's like, yes, Tyler. I was like, okay.
Yeah. It's when I stand next to Jamie and I'm looking down.
Brandon Ralph is 6'2".
There you go. It's like it's me or you was standing next to the mountain.
Yeah.
If we were standing next to Hafthor Bjornsson, we'd be looking straight up. Like, this dude is freaking huge. But then you see pictures of him standing next to his father and his brother, and they're both taller than he is. He's bigger than they are, but they're tall. They're both taller than he is.
Yeah, but it was one of those things like if you didn't have the reference point of other people from him, you're like, oh, that's cool. You wouldn't think much of it, but then you put like a normal person in that frame and you're like, oh dear God.
Yeah.
And me and Welling are both 6'3", same height. Okay, back to our show. Back to the boys. Now the boys
leave our how tall is each Superman actor segment.
How tall is he, Tyler? Well, I'll tell you. So the scene we have, the boys are outside, they want to go to the movies, okay? And they're sitting there and was it Timmy? Was it Timmy?
Timmy, yeah. It's Timmy.
Shows up and Timmy Ryan is yelling about how they're getting back on the football team. It's unfair. You took drugs or you had powers and to play football, and they're basically saying like, you guys have powers, it's not fair and all this, and they're denying it. And then Mr. Cushing being a nice, like, Kyle's a character I've really come to like on the show. Comes over and tries to break it up. And it's a really great emotional scene. Jania, hold on, stay right there. You get Jania's right off camera, everybody. She can attest to this. It's a really great emotional scene. And I bust out laughing like a ridiculous, crazy person. Don't I, babe?
Always.
During the scene in Superman and Lois with the boys outside the movie theater.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And you were like, what is wrong with you?
But I'm kind of used to you doing stuff like that, too. You do it in, like, movies randomly when you see something cool that nobody else sees.
Did you see the movie that was on the marquee, James?
No.
Okay, James didn't see it. I still don't know what you did last Flag Day. So I read the marquee and I am laughing.
Hilarious.
And Jania's like looking at me and I back it up and I show her and she starts like, oh my gosh, she's like, that's so funny. I'm like, yeah, that's why I'm laughing during this like really serious scene here. But yeah, it becomes something that's really hard for the boys because now they're having to lie.
Right. I mean, and ironically in that scene, Timmy's like, you were a freshman and you had superpowers, star quarterback, I had to take XK just to keep up, when at the time John actually didn't have any superpowers, that he was just a good athlete. He was just a gifted athlete at the time. So, but that's not something like they can, at the moment, at least they can be like, well, no, like that's not the case, But yeah, having to, because they talk about how they had to sit by and let the other boys make fun of Timmy behind his back, and they just had to sit idly by and let that happen, when they just want to be like, yeah, we are Superboys, but also at that time I didn't have any powers. Like I just got powers, like So I do love in the end, ultimately they're like, we're gonna go back and apologize to Timmy and tell him everything, and
I'm gonna name this episode. I still don't know what you did last Flag Day. See who gets it. And they sit down with Timmy's mom, and like the boys are arguing, and the mom's like, I went to school with Clark. I've known him since we were kids. And what's funny, what's ironic and weird is before we watched this episode, me and the kids and my in-laws went to dinner at a local Mexican restaurant. And the restaurant's about 10 minutes from where I live. Where I went to high school is about another 20 minutes north. Okay. And we're sitting there in this restaurant, and this couple comes in. I look at them, and they sit kind of, and I'm looking at them, and I'm like, oh my God, I went to high school with them. I'm like, they're still together. They were dating when we were in high school. And then I walk over to the table, and I'm like, I say, hey, Sean. And he looks at me, and I'm like, and then his wife, it's like, oh my God, Tyler. And Sean's like, what? She's like, Tyler Patrick. And he's like, oh my gosh. And it was just one of those moments where I'm like, I haven't seen you guys in like 20 years.
right.
And then like in this episode where it's always so much about like, oh, I went to high school with Clark. I knew Clark. And I'm like, yeah, all right.
Right. That's kind of how it is in a small town, I mean, along those lines, I've got a friend who I talk to once in a while. We don't speak a whole lot these days. Just game once in a while, play something online. But yeah, him and his wife have been together since senior year of high school, and they're still together. Yeah.
Life.
It's just something I like for them,
The boys, while they're talking about keeping the secret and everything, while Clark is out, they talk about we're not going to have friends, when they're talking about dad and I. Well, we have each other. Do you really want to be those twins that are creepy that only hang out with each other? No.
I didn't think so.
Now, before we get into like one of the clinchers of this episode, let's jump back. Kyle and Chrissy are trying to find a house. They find a great house for $300,000. Where is this house? Because
sure as hell ain't on the market these days.
Because I mean, I know houses nearby, like near Columbus, that's 300,000. That you'd be like, what? Why? But my question is it in Smallville? Like the house is in Smallville? Like, because there was no conversation about really leaving Smallville. So where is this house? But like Kyle's gonna sell his grill to help get money for the down payment.
Which I loved Lois's comment. Clark is like, Kyle selling his grill. What? His grill? Grilling is his superpower.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So and Chrissy's the one that is gonna sell her stake in the Gazette to get the down
but ultimately can't, because the conglomerate was a shell corporation for Luthor Corp.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
You know what would help if maybe Tal Rowe, Morgan Edge had left Clark and Lois a lot of money when he disappeared to another Earth.
Right.
I mean, he did live a villa, remember that? And a truck for the boys. You think he maybe could have left some, scratch or like even the Daily Planet over to Lois Lane or something. I'm just saying, whatever happened to Edge Industries or Edge whatever, just kind of fell apart. But anyways,
well, I mean, I'm guessing that they would probably, in part, be most of his public assets would probably be dissolved after he tried to become an authoritarian on the planet.
All I needed was a line of dialogue.
Yeah,
all I needed is a line of dialogue.
Necessary.
I just need a line of dialogue that says it was like bought by Luthor Corp.
Right. Yeah.
Solomon goes, when we're watching episode 2, he goes, Luthor Corp. He goes, Dad, shouldn't it be LexCorp? I'm like, well, son, we'll discuss more later. Let's watch the episode and we'll talk. So that sets us up that Clark and Lois basically say that her dad, never took sick days, did all this stuff, whatever, left them some money, and they're going to put up the money to buy her stake in the Gazette so they can get the house. And then if Chrissy ever wants to buy it back, she can.
Yeah, the option's open. Yeah, it was really sweet. It was really nice.
So now we go to the clincher part of the episode when they're in.
But then I love Kyle right there. He says, "This is time to celebrate," and he says, "Dinner's on me." Like, this is not a negotiation.
And I do like, because Kyle admits, like, when we were in high school, I wasn't always the nicest to you, Kent. And Clark's, yeah. He's like, no.
Yeah, that's true.
And then Chrissy's like,
Chrissy got knocked up
by the town bully. And then in walks Emmett Burgandy, and Clark hears him. He's like, Emmett Burgandy, and he starts running his mouth. And inside the diner is like all the little characters that we've got to see, most of them, like Chuck and people of Smallville who's been moving around, someone who know. And Emmett runs his mouth. Kyle gets up, and Emmett pulls the gun and says, I can't remember what he exactly says to Clark, and he fires the gun. And this is probably
he says he's not leaving until he proves in front of everybody what he is or who he is.
Now, granted, Clark probably could have used his heat vision or something quickly, but this heat vision is more like laser, so never mind. I was kind of thinking like Brandon Routh style of the animated series, where it's just like heat waves, or maybe he could have like breath, like whew, and he dropped the gun.
Well, right. I mean, there's some different things happening. It's a place crowded full of people. He can't exactly like zip in, zip out. The waitress is standing on the wall behind him, so he can't move and he got out of the way as he shot the gun and dodged. And then somebody else would get shot behind him.
It's a great scene because, like you said, it's placed though he doesn't have a lot of options, and he shoots, and I love it because he shoots and it goes to slow-mo, and Clark turns and he looks at Lois. He looks at his wife, and he looks around, and he takes his glasses off.
You almost expect her to give the Lena Headey little head nod, but she's giving him the great, just the I trust you stare, And
he does this, and he does the last shirt rip of the episode, and we see that bullet hit right there. And look at that texture. Look at that.
Yeah.
And then
a bunch of S's.
Well, I mean, it is having a bunch of the S's in the design, and the S is a little bit more compressed here. It's definitely a little bit more throwback to previous iterations, the suit and stuff. And it's definitely a 3D. Tyler's had more Superman costumes than any other Superman actor.
Yes, he has.
And then here's all the shit rips of the episode minus the and look how each one's almost like a different suit. Almost.
Yeah.
And so he stands there and he rips, the shirt, the bullet hits, and the bullet falls, and Jania, God bless that beautiful woman, says the exact, it's a great emotional moment, and Jania says the same thing that I'm thinking when the bullet drops. Where'd the boots come from?
Yeah.
Because
his entire outfit is gone. Shoes, pants, shirt, it's all gone. He's standing in full Superman suit. And cape and boots and all.
And you know what? It looks great, but I could have almost gone with just him doing the shirt rip and just standing there with the shirt open, and the bullet dropping.
Yeah.
But no, he's standing full Superman. He stands there, and Emmett's freaking out, and he's like, I knew it. He said it was true. And that's when they get the gun off of him, and Kyle jumps up and is like, I got it from here, and takes him to the sheriff. And Clark's just standing there, and the camera pans out of the diner, and you just hear Clark say, I'm sorry I had to lie to you for so long.
Yeah, I'm sorry I've lied to you for so long.
And
that scene, when Emmett is just hollering at him, saying, you know, all this and that, calling him a nothing, and saying, how could a nothing put me down on the counter like that? And, you know, you like making people feel like nothing. And like, I've been living out of my car. It's like, you're an abusive drug dealer piece of crap.
To pull a gun on Lois.
You pulled a gun on Lois and you punched a child. You got what you deserved. I mean, living in your car like that. You know what I mean?
I'd be pretty grateful that he didn't do more than he could have. Now, I don't know if you've been listening to Anthony's George Reeves Listen To podcast, because there was an episode, and I was on, where George Reeves as Superman takes a dude, flies him to a mountaintop, and just leaves him. And he does it a couple of times in the series. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's a big debate about that's his getaway. Like, got to get rid of somebody. Superman easily could have just grabbed him and flew him to the middle of nowhere and dropped him off. Or took him up and dropped him, and then waited until he got about that far from the ground and grabbed him. But there's a lot more things that could have happened to Mr. Burgundy here than just being pushed on the counter.
Yeah.
So that happens, and so Clark decides with the family, it's a family decision, what to do about the secret. Mm-hmm. And they decide that it's time that he reveals himself to the world. And they call in Janet Olsen. And the funniest thing about this that I laughed at was the director of the actual episode is playing the director behind the camera, filming the interview.
Oh, was he the guy who said, "Oh, great job, everybody"? Da da da
yes.
da.
Yeah,
that's cool.
It's
always cool when the director can get themselves in. Just usually.
I would. Cool. I'd always be in the background somewhere for one shot.
Yeah.
Like,
mm-hmm.
man on the street walking his dog, guy eating.
Yeah, don't have to have a word. You don't have to. You don't have to be. You don't have to be M. Night Shyamalan in Signs and have a whole dialogue.
I think I would just be the guy in every movie I direct who's like drinking a Coke in the background, like a cherry Coke. It's like one frame you just see me drinking a cherry Coke. It becomes that thing you look for in my movies, But he does that, and he just reveals like he is Clark Kent and all this, and he's Superman, and it's cool because he does that, and we'll go back to it in a second. But the next shot is he's getting dressed in the morning, and he's got the glasses, and like for the first time in a long time, he puts them down. He doesn't have to wear them, and he walks out into town, and he sees Denise, and she's like, "Morning, Mr. Kent." And then he walks in and sees Jimmy. It's just cute because they're just, he's Mr. Kent. And Brian and I talked about this a little bit where we thought, you know what? The idea that he reveals himself to Smallville, I could go with. Like the whole town knows that Clark Kent's Superman. Like it becomes like a thing that brings Smallville together. Okay? But then the fact that we're here where Clark reveals himself to the world. One, they did that on Supergirl for her finale, and her final episode was, Kara tells the world she's Supergirl, and she doesn't wear her glasses anymore. So it feels almost kind of like retread in one sense. I think it's more effective here than it was on Supergirl. And then the other thing is, we've been reading the New 52, and we read the Bendis comics years ago. Both very, very different takes on the idea of Clark revealing himself to the world.
Yes.
So what comes next?
Exactly. What comes next? We have 3 more episodes. He's revealed himself to the world to get ahead of Lex Luthor trying to use the secret against them. We got the looming threat of Lex Luthor in this episode, and he's nowhere to be seen. But yeah, where do we go next? Because the people of Smallville are good, they're great. Hi, Mr. Kent, how's it going? And but yeah, where do we go from there? Like what is going to happen to the family in this with this response? The family, Lois, their career, their life. Clearly Lex's next move is going to be to get physical again. He's not going to be able to play this shell game with this secret that's no longer a secret.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the way that they revealed the secret in this episode. I love the reveal. I liked how Janet said, "I worked with you for years, and I never had a clue." The way that he was, I'm just a regular guy. Beyond the powers, it's like I'm a father. I'm a husband. I've never used my powers for personal gain, just to help people, which I love when he talked about never using his powers for personal gain, how they cut to the coach watching the interview.
Yeah.
And, you could see the coach like, well, damn, there goes my season.
Exactly.
Which, like we said before, was highly unethical of him to try and get superpowered individuals onto his freaking football team. But yeah, it's I love how much of a regular guy, because that is a thing, people are so on the idea that DC characters and Superman are just these archetypes,
Yeah.
that they're these monolithic beings and
They're
creatures,
the pantheon of the gods.
Exactly. But especially when you talk about like the pantheon of the gods, the gods were typically horrible individuals, very flawed, extremely flawed. And when it comes to Superman, he is a highly ethical, highly moral individual, a guy just trying to do the right thing, just trying to help. And he can do more than anybody else can. So what is his ability to help is just so much greater. And he has the heart, the humanity. He's more human than most humans. And people don't recognize that in the character.
Brian and I were talking about, hold on, I'm pulling it right now. I was talking about how much I like in The Amazing Spider-Man, Uncle Ben's quote, he doesn't do that with great power comes great responsibility. He says something different. And I was telling Brian how much I actually liked the way it's worded. And I'm trying to find it exactly because I don't want to paraphrase. Here he goes. He says, your father lived by a philosophy, a principle. He believed that if you could do good things for other people, you had a moral obligation to do those things. That's what's at stake here. Not choice, responsibility.
Yeah.
And I think that's, true with the whole, like, Superman he has the ability to do something and he's doing it because he can. And I really like Tyler's take on the character. And the one thing is with Tyler's Clark is so interesting is because, we always argue like Superman, Clark, the real person or whatever, but his Superman never interacts with anybody other than like what Lana in season 1 and 2 and a few people in Smallville. Like he's not interacting a lot with Smallville people.
Yeah.
You know, and then Clark in the past was kind of pretty much the same Clark that we see in out and about in Smallville. But Clark and Superman aren't really interacting with the same group of people, so he doesn't have to make it as different, like on the spectrum.
Yeah, such a delineation between one version of him and the other.
And you know, it's like most of the time when we see him interacting with people, it's his family or his friends that know, so he doesn't have to really be that different.
Yeah, I do like that, and that's one thing, honestly, in our new 52 reading, and it was something actually in our reading tonight that I thought about, that I forgot to bring up, is that delineation. You know, Clark versus Superman, is one the real person, is one the other? You know what I mean?
Yep.
In my opinion, Superman is his mask. You know, like he is Clark Kent, but he feels that responsibility to do something because he can.
Yeah.
And to remain Clark Kent, that's why he's Superman.
Mm-hmm.
But he is Clark Kent, you know, underneath it, he is Clark Kent. Whereas, like, it's the opposite with Batman. Bruce Wayne is his mask, where he is Batman. Everything he does as Bruce Wayne is in service of being Batman.
I look at it in the sense of like he's one person, okay? When he's Superman, it's like being professional. Like when I go to work, I have a job. I have to, you know, I testify in court. I have to be credible. I can't be goofy and everything like I would be at home. Like when I go to work. When I'm hanging out with you and we're doing stuff and I'm hanging out with my kids, I can be, you know, more goofy and fun and whatever. And that's like the Clark persona. But then when it's just me and Shania run by myself, that's like it's just me doing whatever. I can be however I want. I don't have to be anything. I can be quiet. I can be somber. You know, it's just kind of like it's just little, you know,
little ticks on the same scale.
Yeah. So you just
know?
hold yourself a little bit different as Superman and you act a little bit firmer and quieter. And then when I'm here, I can be a little bit more goofier. So, but that, so my thought is, like I said, they did it on Supergirl, and I think they're doing it better here. We've seen different examples of this kind of thing play out in the comics. So we'll see how it plays out in his world. But it also makes me think back to on Bizarro's world, where they were like celebrities. Everybody knew that Clark Kent was Superman, and his whole family was like a celebrities. So
they've done a pretty good job of bringing things kind of full circle from earlier seasons into later seasons. That might be something that has some sort of correlation, but we've only got 3 episodes left.
Yeah.
8, 9, and 10.
Yep. And we know Luther's going to be pissed. So what is your thoughts, everybody? We've had a nice conversation here tonight. Me and Jimmy Cole here. We'll be back next week. And remember,
Look up in the sky!
Thank you for joining us today on the Krypton Report. We ask you check out our social media. We have a YouTube where we do YouTube specials. You can check out our dollar Patreon, like we talked about, where we do specials. Check the QR code here. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Follow us on X and all other social media. Tyler here. Hope you're enjoying the podcast today. I just want to talk about another project I've really been working on. It's the Requel. It used to be just part of our Patreon, and we still do Patreon exclusives, but I've really pumped it up, and I've started inviting friends to join me as we pitch movie ideas. I ask everyone if they can go and check it out. It's under Jonathan Tyler Patrick on my YouTube, and go like it, subscribe, and if you want to come on and pitch an idea, come on. Just check it out. It's a fun time.
The creator and host of Gravely Amusing. For the past 30 years, I've studied the history of gods and monsters in pop culture and our world. As a student of theology and history, I've tried to understand evil and its impact on us. As a writer, I've tried to share this knowledge. As a comedian, I've tried to make people laugh as I do it. But as a man-child, I'm still that scared 7-year-old boy. Join me as I share the history of horror and sci-fi, discuss classic and modern pop culture, and share a creepy story or two. This podcast may scare you, it may horrify you, or it may leave you gravely amused. Listen to Gravely Amusing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever podcasts are found. Follow us on Twitter at gravely_amusing or on TikTok at gravely amusing.
We have a $1 Patreon. Yes, I know everyone asks for money, but our $1 Patreon each month gets you commentary tracks for releasing movies, DC movies. It gets you my Requel series where I pitch ideas about movie sequels, prequels, or whatever. It also gets special bonus episodes. So check that out for $1 a month. That's all we ask. Keep it cheap, keep it simple, and help us keep going. Check out the link in the show notes or Patreon Krypton Report.
This is Dan Jurgens, and if you want to have a good time, keep listening to the Krypton Report.
Look up in the sky.
We want to thank you for checking out the Krypton Report podcast, and we ask you to check us out on all of our social media, on Twitter X, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, Hive, Threads, YouTube. We're everywhere. And if you want to be a guest on the podcast, just send us a message and let us know.
If you are like Tyler and James and can't get enough super talk, check out these other podcasts. Digging for Kryptonite, Supergirl Radio, The Last Sons of Krypton, The Superboy Legacy Podcast, All-Star Superfans, Superman the Animated Podcast, The Aspiring Kryptonians, Always Hold On to Smallville, The Geek of Steel, and Truth, Justice, and Hope